Alright guys, today I'm going to be doing CHING number 172, so let's just get started. The first thing that I have is a miniature perfume. This was a Dolce & Gabbana light blue perfume in like miniature form that sold for $10. Then the next item I have was, these were from the 1970s. I guess there was a cereal called Freakies at some point. And these were little cereal premiums. They were kind of like these weird monsters. There was a little lot there and I sold them for $20.50. Then I also sold a Puss in Boots. This was a gumball type charm, like the ones you would get in vending machines. And this one was a Puss in Boots. It was so stinking cute. Some of these gumball type charms can sell really well. This one actually sold for $29.99. So that was pretty awesome. And then I sold a Charmkins charm. This was I believe an 80s or early 90s toy. They had a scent to them. I absolutely loved these toys when I was younger. So a Charmkins charm that sold for $19.99. Then this is actually the second time I've sold this, as in I've sold this before and it was returned to me. Someone just wasn't happy with it. So, you know, I accepted the return and I relisted it and it sold again. But it was for a vintage set. These were made by MTC, but it was a Baskin Robbins ice cream set. So all sorts of like play food ice cream pieces. And that lot sold for $19.99. Then I did sell a couple of stickers in this CHING. The first one, these again were from the 1970s, from a Sweet Sip Slurpee. So I guess this was some sort of, you know, frozen treat or something. I'm not entirely sure. Don't quote me on that, by Glen Confections. And it was just a little lot of stickers, and those sold for $9.99. Then we sold a Westmoreland. This was like a little miniature children's glass cup, and it was a Vaseline, so it did glow, and that sold for $19.99. Then this next item was just like a poster paper pamphlet that would have come in, you know, a vintage toy. This was from 1984. And one side was like a Rose Petal Place poster, and then the other side just kind of showed some other Kenner toys from that era, and that sold for $9.99. I sold a round porcelain trinket box with butterflies on it. That sold for $12. Then we sold, again, this was a vintage sticker from the 1970s, and I like Googled this place to see like when it was around, and it was around in the 70s. But it was called Bob's Van Shop, and it was a sticker that sold for $9.99. I also sold a vintage Barbie. This was a melamine plastic Barbie heart-shaped child's plate from 1996 that sold for $6.29. Then I sold another 80s charm. This was one of those bell charms, so the little plastic charms that had a bell attached. This one was of a hammer, and that sold for $5.99. The next two items went to the same person, both vintage Moon Dreamers. The first one was a Moon Dreamers figure named Stumbles that sold $19.99. And the other piece was just an accessory piece, a little pair of earmuffs, and those sold for $12.99. This next item was a crossbody purse by Spartina, $4.49. It was an Outer Banks crossbody purse that sold $45.99. One day at the auction, there was like a box of some purses, and Eric doesn't know a whole ton about purses or anything, but he's like, there were some nice, what I thought were nice purses in this box, so he took a chance on it. He didn't pay much. And I think like every one that came from that box sold, so I think he did really good. And that purse sold for $45.99. Then sold a miniature cast iron donkey, so just a little mini animal figure. That sold $12.99. Sold this was an art glass marble by a person named Fritz Lavenstein. I can barely read my writing. Lavenstein. I think it's Lavenstein. So art glass marble that sold for $99.99. Then we sold a milk glass Westmoreland wedding cake box. So just like this lidded pedestal, what they call a wedding cake box. That sold $34.99. Sold an Avon perfume called Flor Violetta. That was brand new, still sealed, and sold for $12.99. Here's another little miniature item. This was a set by Shackman, and it was like a little farm set with some animals and people in. That sold $9.99. This next item, someone purchased 2 pieces of these vintage She-Ra fashion. So these were separate clothing fashions that you could buy for She-Ra dolls. So the first one was called Deep Blue Secret. That sold for $43.99. And then the other one was called Flight of Fancy, and that one sold $39.99. Then we also sold a She-Ra doll called Angela, and she sold $29.99. This next item was so funny. We sold these back to back to 2 separate people, like at the same time. So it was just kind of funny how that happened. So I sold 2 of these, and they are the Lysol No Touch kitchen systems. These were brand new, came with the system as well as a soap. So sold one for $24.99, and then like right after that, someone else purchased the other one that we had. Same thing, same soap scent, also for $24.99. You will see a bunch of miniature glass hens on nests in this CHING. At one point there was an estate sale that had a whole bunch of really nice glass pieces. It was just a really nice estate sale full of like great things. The great thing about you know, sales, auctions, those types of things, Eric doesn't mind standing in line for hours on end. I don't know how long he was standing in line for this estate sale. He wasn't first in line by any means, but he wasn't too far back either, because he waited in line for so many hours. But he doesn't mind doing that. He doesn't mind going to auctions, you know, spending a day at the auction. Like, he enjoys that aspect, and I personally don't. So like, I more so enjoy the research side of things and figuring out prices for stuff. So it all works out for us. Like, he likes doing that side, I like doing this type of side. So thankfully, like, that all works out for us. So I did not go to this estate sale. I could have and like helped, you know, grab things and that kind of thing, but oh my gosh, estate sales like that stress me out so bad. I hate that feeling of just rushness and people just nom 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 nom. You know what I mean? Like, I can't deal with that kind of thing. My anxiety just, I cannot. So anyway, he wasn't able to get all of the hens on the nest, but he was able to get a decent amount of them. So you will see quite a few of these, and these miniature hens on the nest, or even just regular hens on the nest, I do think, one, they are making a comeback again. I don't know if it ever really went away as far as popularity, but I definitely feel like the popularity of them is growing again. And some of them, depending on maker and color, can go for an insane amount of money. It's crazy, and you will see some of them in here, okay, to be on the lookout for. So let's just go back into where we left off. So the first one that we had, these were by Boyd Glass, all right? So this one, and again, these were the mini ones, not full size, the mini versions. This one was in the shade Cashmere Pink. That sold $71.55. I think the mini hens on the nest might have been $14, $15 in that range a piece at the estate sale. But still, lots of money to be made in some of them, and you'll see as I keep going through this cha-ching. Next one was a red carnival glass miniature hen on the nest that sold for $58. Then we also have one in an aqua diamond carnival glass that sold $79. And then one called Windsor Blue Carnival that sold $61. And as I go, you'll see some that sold for way more than that. Next item was a Golden Cross lot of Christmas snowflakes. So these were like just a huge lot. I think it was like 50 some of them. And basically you would, well, they were ornaments, but you could do your little cross stitching through them and, you know, make your own designs and colors and that kind of thing. Anyway, that whole lot sold $27.99. Same with this next item, pretty much by the same company, Golden Cross. These were needle form, again, ornaments that you could do your cross stitching on, and that lot sold $12.99. The next item, someone purchased 3 pieces of vintage My Little Pony items. The first one was a Spike the Dragon figure that sold $12.99. They also purchased a My Little Pony called Rainbow Curl that sold $26.99, as well as a Summer Wing pony that sold, its name was Buzzer, and that sold for $19.99. This next item, someone purchased 2 of them. So we had 2 available and they purchased both. And these were Ziploc rectangle food containers. So these were brand new in the box. They were older, and those sold for the set of 2 for a total of $39.98. Then we sold a vintage from 1962 Casper coloring book. I think this was like a dot-to-dot style coloring book that sold $9.99. Here is another Boyd Glass hen on the nest. This one was in the shade Waterloo. That sold $54.99. Then sold a little set of, these were from 1996. They were Mighty Ducks accessory pieces that went with Mighty Ducks toy figures. That little lot sold $9.99. This next mini hen on a nest was actually a Westmoreland hen on a nest. It was a blue milk glass hen, and that sold $29.99. Then the next 2 items also went to the same person. These were Blossom Bucket Santas. So the first one was Santa holding a sign with a star that sold $31, and then the other one was a Santa holding a tree, and that one sold for $51. So this really weird little vintage miniature Cupid doll. This was just an odd one. That sold for $9.99. I also sold a lot of Perfectly Posh samples. These were called Right on Cue. They were like a cuticle cream sample. So a whole little lot of those sold $9.99. So here are 2 of the really expensive Boyd Glass mini hens on the nest. So the first one was a what they call Buckeye, and it was a satin slag glass mini hen on a nest, sold for $204. Then the next one was again another satin one, a blue gray slag glass, sold for $301.69. So just off those two alone was worth the time Eric spent in line for that estate sale to open. And I do remember like when the estate sale company posted about this estate sale like on Facebook, and some people thought like, you know, I'm pretty sure I will have to ask Eric and like edit it in what he actually paid for the hens. I feel like it was in the 14-15 range a piece. But I remember people saying like they thought that was a crazy amount to ask for the little mini hens on a nest at an estate sale. And that just goes to show you some people don't look stuff up. They just assume, or you know what I mean, they just see a price like that and it's like, oh, you know, well, there's no money to be made in that, or that kind of thing. And that is so not true. You just have to, you know, figure out which ones are worth the money and that kind of thing, because it's just, it's crazy. It's crazy, but like I understand as far as collecting things go. You guys know, I collect like vintage Christmas, vintage Halloween. I have like tons of vintage Christmas items that were, you know, made in Japan, you know, that kind of era of Christmas. And I so desperately want like an old German like woodcutter Santa, or just, you know, one of those Santas, the old German Santas, especially like maybe one that's like riding an animal or that kind of thing. And they are like thousands of dollars. And it's my dream to own one someday, but like I completely understand people, you know, willing to spend a crazy amount for something just for the sake of having that specific color or that specific piece in their collection. One day I will have one. If that means I have to sell every piece of my vintage Japan Christmas items to get that one German piece, so be it. Okay, so I'm getting a little off topic here. This was a vintage style Halloween box with the lid. So it was like a cardboard box with kind of like a paper mache pumpkin on top. That sold $19.99. Sold a vintage from 1989 Fisher Price Fun with Food picnic basket. This had a ton of food and accessory pieces inside. That sold $49.99. This next item, again, crazy amount for this. This was technically, I should say this was brand new, still sealed, but this is also a game I feel like is just hard to find, period. So even if you would find it used, I would take a look and see. I feel like used probably would still sell well, but this was called Penguin Pat's Fishy Business Game. I had never even heard of this. It came up at the auction, and of course I looked it up and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much this game is worth. It sold $99.99. Then I also sold, these were from 1982 and I don't remember these. They were called the Little Me. It was a doll boutique. So it was the play set, and then it came with the dolls and like their little clothes and hangers and little hair wigs and all of that good stuff. That sold $39.99. I sold a vintage My Little Pony. This was a glittering gem pony. I think this was one where like you brushed out its hair and the tail got long, and then it went back in, and when you moved its head back and forth type of thing. So did a little something. That sold for $14.99. Sold a set of 3. These were by Cynthia Rowley. They were flamingo bowls. These were a melamine plastic bowl set of 3 that sold $14.99. Here's another Boyd mini glass hen on a nest. This one was a milk chocolate slag that sold $79.99. We sold a vintage from the 1990s Dale Earnhardt NASCAR racing shirt that sold $79.99. This next item was a porcelain flower. These were called a peace flower by Bowen. That sold for $49.99. Also sold, this was a Dell's Rooster tea kettle, kind of like hot pad that you would hold on to like your tea kettle. I think it went over the tea kettle handle. That sold for $9.99. Sold another vintage My Little Pony. This one was a So Soft pony called Magic Star. She sold $29.99. Then I sold two, these both went to the same person. These were two artisan made miniature mohair little animals. These were really so cute and well made. They were by an artist named Deb Cannon. So the first one was a mini mohair bear. I think it was riding like a little rocking horse. That sold $89.99. And then the other one was a mohair mini mouse. I think it was on a snowball or a snowflake or something along those lines. And that one sold $69.99. Sold a lot of alabaster Easter eggs. Those sold $14.99. Also sold another vintage charmkins. This one was like a necklace that had attached charmkin pieces on it, and that sold $29.99. And the last thing for this cha-ching was a Littlest Pet Shop stylus. This would have gone to a Littlest Pet Shop little like electronic organizer. Unfortunately, it was just a stylus. I think I found it in a random box of stuff at a yard sale one time, so probably paid $1/4 for it, and that piece sold $9.99. So that is everything for this cha-ching. So there was definitely some really nice high price things in this, and then obviously you know, some way cheaper items. But as I think I said in my last cha-ching, you know, when the real expensive stuff isn't selling you know, as often, and you still have those cheaper items available, you know what I mean, it's still like adding into the amount of money that you're making, basically. So as far as my eBay sales, they are currently up. My goodness, summer slowdown, they say. Which I was feeling it for a little bit, but my sales are up 16.3%, so I will take that. I do think, you know, some days sales are better than others, but that's pretty much how it is, like all through the year. It doesn't matter what month we're in or what holiday we're around or anything like that. So let me see if there's anything I need to talk about as far as eBay goes. I feel like there's not, but there is one thing I wanted to mention, and I don't think I ever mentioned it in any recent cha-chings. And this was implemented kind of a while ago. I can't say for certain exactly when it was implemented, but I was having like a ton of sales when I was listing like my vintage My Little Ponies. I would sell so many My Little Ponies that would go overseas to the United Kingdom. And they passed some sort of legislature bill or something where like you can't buy vintage toys anymore. Like you can't bring in vintage toys from out of the country no longer into the United Kingdom. I guess it has something to do with I don't know, maybe like safety regulations from back in that time, or I honestly don't know exactly, and I'm sorry for that. I should be a little more informed. But I just know like they're not able to buy the vintage toys anymore. So that sucks, because that hurts, you know, our sales that aren't able to go, you know, through customs to the United Kingdom for like the people who are buying like those vintage toys. And it sucks for them too that they're not able to collect and, you know, buy these things. So I feel like that took a toll on some of my, you know, vintage pony sales. And I still have like, well, still have quite a few ponies listed, but I still have like a tote full of pony stuff. And I have like vintage pony play sets. I have the like Paradise Estate huge play set. So I still have so many pieces of vintage ponies, so hopefully that doesn't like affect any of those sales when I do get those things listed. So yeah, that was just something that, you know, happened, and this was like, I would say like a few months back now, and I completely forgot about mentioning it. But I feel like that's pretty much everything as far as eBay related. I don't really want to talk about our booth too much in the CHING video. I'll save that for, you know, when I do like a what sold in the booth, but that's going really well. I also feel like my whatnot is doing pretty well. I just had a show yesterday. I did a miniature show and it went really, really well. I was super happy about that, starting out the month with a lot of sales on whatnot. So as always, and I'm not forcing any one of you to come over to whatnot if you haven't, but my link is always in the description. You can sign up. I think you get so much off if you use my referral code for your first purchase if you are, you know, brand new to whatnot. I sometimes source on whatnot. I actually just purchased something like a week or so ago on whatnot, and I sold it on eBay for like a lot more than what I paid for it on whatnot. So it's definitely a place where you can easily source from as well, and you know, to sell things too. I do have 3 shows scheduled currently. I have a show scheduled for Thursday. It is just going to be kind of like a clear out type show. All of my stuff is starting at $1 or $2, so like next to nothing prices, and I'm perfectly fine if that's all it sells for, because after that show, anything that doesn't sell, it's out of here. It's not going to be in my house anymore. Where it goes, I don't know. Maybe an auction, maybe Goodwill, maybe the trash. I'm not sure, but I just want it out of my house. I'm getting to that point where some things I am not even hanging on to even try to resell. Like, it just needs gone. So that's kind of what's happening in that show on Thursday. Then I do have a show scheduled that's going to be a vintage variety show, and it's going to be all new stuff, things that I have recently got, and so it won't be anything that anyone, you know, has already seen for those of you who do watch my shows. And then I also have a vintage toy show / clothing show I'm going to be doing, and Eric really wants me to schedule a vintage Christmas show. So as soon as my Thursday show's over, then I'll schedule the vintage Christmas show and have like a little Christmas in July type thing going on, because he has like a bunch of vintage Christmas cards and he's so excited about getting them put into a vintage Christmas show. So I'm gonna schedule the show so he can put in the vintage Christmas cards that he wants to put in. But yeah, I think, you know, things are going good over there as well. So it's just like another avenue. Definitely, and that's with anything, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't just focus on eBay. Don't just focus on whatnot. Don't just focus on Mercari. Put things for sale in all sorts of places, at least more than one. Right now I do eBay, I do whatnot, and we have our antique booth. I do still have a couple listings on Mercari, but sales on Mercari for me are few and far between. So I don't focus a whole lot of my time and energy on that, since I just don't have a whole lot of sales that I get on Mercari. And then I guess the only other thing, just reselling related, we have been so incredibly lucky lately where we have been invited into people's houses to actually come and personally buy things from them. That is just, you know, as a reseller or picker, that's the kind of thing that like you just strive to be able to do, kind of thing, because that way you can buy like a whole bunch of stuff at once, and you don't have to, you know, go to an auction and have to fight for the items from like, you know, multiple other people. So it's just been really awesome that we've been having these opportunities lately, and they're just kind of like falling into our laps from other people. So it's like if you know someone who knows someone, and then, you know, you have like a friendship with them, it helps to get your foot into the door, like literally, of people like allowing you to come in and purchase things, which is just awesome. And I just feel so incredibly blessed and lucky for that, you know, people even allow it. Do you get what I'm saying? Because it's such a personal kind of thing when you're allowing like pretty much strangers coming into your house, or, you know, that kind of thing, and buying stuff from you. So we've been so lucky. We there was a man and a lady that we were able to buy from semi recently, and everyone is always so incredibly sweet as well. So we bought some stuff from them, and then there was another lady, actually, when we were moving our antique booth, she was looking at our glass, and one thing led to another, and she's like, I have glass, I have some swung vases, and I'm looking to sell. And it's like, okay, you know, all right, like, how much, when, you know what I mean? Let's make a deal, kind of thing. So her thing was she wanted everything gone. So there were a couple pieces, you know, that we, you know, it's not really going to be worth a whole lot of money and that kind of thing, but, you know, she wanted to sell it all, and to make things easy for her, we, you know, bought it all and took it all, because that's what, you know, she wanted. And we did get a lot of nice pieces from her. We did get a couple swung vases, some Pyrex, and things like that. So that was amazing. And then literally the very next day, I think it was, Eric was at the auction, and a man at the auction that he talks to, there was a lady that he knew that was getting set up ready to have a yard sale the following day, and he's like, I think you might want to check out this yard sale. And since he knew the lady, we were able to go the day before to, you know, look at all of her stuff and purchase things. So we bought so much stuff from her. There was still like a ton of stuff left, don't get me wrong, but we bought so many things from her. She had such nice things, and I don't even remember what all we got. It was just so many things. So, you know, some of those things will be going in the booth. Some I have been starting to list on eBay, and then some will be put into my whatnot shows. I literally bought like maybe 30 or so mini glass hens from her for $1 a piece. But they were pink, purple, I think blue. Pink, purple, and blue. So they weren't Boyd's or anything like that, which, as you saw in the CHING, are the ones that are worth a whole lot of money. So not like a ton of money in the ones that we got, but I did put a purple one on eBay because there weren't any currently listed, and I think that ends today. So we'll see what that ends at. I think it's at $16 or so, so we'll see. So yeah, we've just been able to be buying like a lot of stuff, to so much so that I am not going yard sailing on Thursday. I'm having my whatnot show. We just don't need to source right now. So I'm gonna try and focus a little more on what I have currently, and try to get through, you know, some of that. And plus it's the week of a holiday, so I just figure a lot of people are going to be doing holiday related things or going on vacation, so there probably isn't going to be a ton of yard sales this week anyway, so just taking a break from it this week. No saying, Eric might still go out to one or two depending. I'll still look this evening to see if any of them sound, you know, like something interesting. But yeah, that's pretty much how things have been going. Things have been going pretty good, and you know, just feel so lucky about, you know, being allowed to buy things from people beforehand, kind of thing. That's just, it's awesome. Oh, and we bought 2 swung vases from that lady at the that was having a yard sale. So just crazy, crazy, crazy. And I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about. Hopefully everyone enjoyed that live video I did at the outdoor antique flea market. I thought that would be fun to do a live because I had never done one before on YouTube. So hopefully everyone enjoyed that. I will attempt to do another live type video at some point. I don't know where or when. I guess maybe next time we are somewhere where there's like, you know, a lot of stuff for us to look at, so that, you know, I can show you guys a whole bunch of stuff at one time. Maybe we'll go to, I don't know, an antique store or something. We could do like a live, just shop with me at an antique store or something like that. There's an idea. Maybe that's what we'll do next time. Does that sound like fun, doing a live? I just don't know like when they would be, so I don't really know like how to schedule something like that out. But you know, you can always see it after the fact as well. But yeah, if everyone, you know, I get some good feedback about that last live video, then, you know, I'll consider keep doing those at various places when I can. But that is pretty much everything for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Let me know how things are going for you on eBay, especially. Are you experiencing the summer slowdown, or are sales still, you know, chugging along? I feel like my sales are still chugging along, but like I said, some days aren't as fantastic as other days. Like today, hold on, it is 9:53 in the morning. I didn't have any sales yet today, and nothing overnight since Eric did packages yesterday. So no sales.